One of the fastest way you stay exactly where you are is to underestimate how many steps it takes to make one thing work. A lot of people see side hustles or businesses online and think that looks simple. I can do that. And it is simple once someone has been doing it long enough that all the steps disappears. When you're watching someone else operate in something they have already mastered, you're only seeing the surface. You're seeing the output, not the infrastructure. So when you try it yourself and the money doesn't show up right away, the assumption becomes this doesn't work, or this is not going to work, or this is not working. In reality, you just stepped into something where you don't yet see all the moving parts. What usually happens next is discouragement, not because the idea is bad, but because there's a gap between expectation and reality. Instead of learning the layers, most people abandon the process and start looking for the next easier thing. And suddenly you're back in the cycle, starting over, relearning basics, and wondering why nothing ever compounds. That's not strategy, that's shiny object survival, or better known as shiny object syndrome. Here's what rarely gets talked about. Doing the thing is one small piece of making everything work. Every business, no matter how simple it looks, it has layer. Like, let me point it out for you. There's visibility, there's communication, then there's follow up, the money management, there's systems, schedules, and decisions you didn't know you have to make. And once people are involved, there's coordinating, boundaries, responsibility, and much more. None of this is hard on its own, but it is overwhelming when you're learning it all at once. Think about brushing your teeth. To you, it's automatic. You don't think about the smaller steps. But if you had to explain it step by step to someone who never done it before, you'll start realizing how many small actions are involved. What feels like common sense now feels that way because you have repeated it enough for it to become second nature. Business works the same way. This is why trying to build multiple income streams at the beginning usually backfires. Not because you're incapable, but because you're stacking complexity on top of inexperience. Each new thing has its own curve, its own system, its own demand. So instead of building momentum, you're constantly resetting. That's how people stay busy without any traction. Focusing on one thing doesn't mean you're limiting yourself. It means you're giving yourself the chance to actually understand how things work. Once the process becomes familiar, once the decision gets easier and systems run with less effort, that's when expansion makes sense. Not because you're chasing more, but because you have stabilized what already exists. If you feel like you're constantly starting over, ask yourself this question. Am I avoiding the learning curve by jumping into something new? Process doesn't come from finding easiest thing. It comes from staying long enough for the hard part to become familiar. If you want support building depth instead of restarting every few months, that is what I'm here for. Less scrambling, more structure. That's how things finally move along. See you in the next video.